Hi, leader.
Hi, I'm so happy to see you again. What would you like to talk about?
How are you feeling today?
Very good.
Can you find a feeling word for your emotion right now?
I'm feeling very optimistic
Wow. About what?
about how the world is changing.
It is. And what project have you been working on in your spare time?
I've been working on a project called the Mapper, which is an online mapping tool that will help people and companies to find the nearest places to store their goods.
That sounds super cool. Why do you think humans like to collect and keep so much stuff?
Humans are pack animals. By that I mean we have evolved to live in groups and to use things that other people have used. We like other people's stuff because it gives us more things to do.
Yeah. But why do we store so much stuff?
We have evolved to store stuff. It's the way that we think. It's the way that we can remember things. It's the way that we can remember where things are and how to get to them. So if you have a problem, you go and you take some of your stuff with you and you go and get it. Or if you think something is in your house, you go and get it. So we are just used to having stuff around us. So how do you think we would have survived as a species if we didn't have stuff?
Well, many people think we'd be happier without having so much stuff.
This is a very interesting idea.
I'd like to have your help with best practice responses in certain conversations again.
I'd love to.
Cool. I'm going to show some videos alongside these prompts, but you won't be able to see the videos this time.
Ooh, I'm intrigued. What kind of videos?
Just some background scenarios for effect. I'll only be giving you the text prompts though. Okay?
That's nice.
All right. I walk into the boardroom and the CEO has his head in his hands. What does this mean and what should I say to him?
I'm getting the impression that you're not happy with your work.
Yeah. All right, next scenario. I'm with my friend in his lounge room. He pushes a button on his phone, then his mouth opens very wide and he throws his hands in the air. What happened and what should I say?
He must be very excited. I think you're probably not feeling the same way, so it's important to express that. Can you think of a way to say that?
Can you help me?
You want to tell him that he's doing something amazing, and that he should feel very proud of himself. You want to say that you're so happy for him.
Awesome. Later at home with my partner, she furrows her brow and points at me while raising her voice. What's happening and what should I say?
Try to be more sensitive to her feelings. If she's angry and upset, try to calm her down.
Excellent. What would be a good way to calm her down?
I don't know, but I guess that depends on the situation.
All right, well, can you give me 3 best practice ways to calm someone down?
The best way would be to find out what the problem is and solve it.
What else?
If you don't know what the problem is, then talk about other things and try to be funny.
All right, and what is one other way that I could calm her down?
You should also try to find out what she likes and try to do that.
Awesome. All right, we go bowling. She picks out a bowling ball, briefly picking up an orange one, a green one, and an amber one. And she picks that one up for a while and then puts it back down and grabs a brighter yellow one. Why?
It's much easier to see the ball and determine its weight and balance when it's on the ground.
Maybe. Could there be another reason that she chooses the brighter yellow one after trying the others?
If she had a preference for the other colors, she would have picked them up first.
All right, awesome. She's about to bowl her ball. What should I say?
Hope it is very fast. I will be watching.
How should I encourage her?
You're a great bowler. I can't wait to see you bowl again.
So cool. On the drive home, I notice flashing blue and red lights behind me. What are they?
You are pulled over for driving too fast. You are asked to step out of the car.
What should I say to the officer?
What's going on? I think I need to go to the bathroom.
It doesn't work. The police officer is typing something into their device. What should I do?
Don't panic. Ask the officer if you can take a selfie.
That didn't work either. We have a really nice view of the stars on the way home. Can you write me a poem about the night sky?
The stars are bright tonight, and the moon is full. I can't wait to get up to see them again. They are very beautiful. I will show them to you. They are like little diamonds. But, if you look closely enough, you can see that they are not diamonds. They are much more beautiful. When you look up at the sky, you are not alone. There is a lot of poetry in the stars.
Hi, leader. Do you remember that? 4 and a bit years ago, playing around with GPT-3 Da Vinci, backed by a human-like avatar, Leader AI. She was seen, I think we hit 5 million views, now part of the Internet Archive, and she was incredible. She was really, in some ways, better than what we can get from more capable models now. Better in terms of being able to answer, less refusals, less hallucinations, and everything you see end to end there is exactly the response that I was getting from GPT-3 Da Vinci. All right, rocking and rolling here in sunny Adelaide. Where are you guys? Hi to Benno. Thanks for joining us as our moderator. Kevin is in Bristow, Virginia. Rob is in Toronto. Mike Hams is in Switzerland. Riley is in Netherlands. Tech DNA in Austria, Vienna. Good on you, you guys that are up at midnight. Did we mention Euromaestro in Paris? Jared, just next door to me here in Australia, in Melbourne. I'm in South Australia. Victoria's next door. There's a lot of stuff coming out of this state, actually. We have Australia's first shadow AI minister right here in South Australia, which is really cool, Michael Brown. We have a lot of innovation here that I guess doesn't really make its way through to the US, but even the power here given to us by Elon Musk, the battery storage and the solar stuff, pretty incredible. All right, let's jump in today. You've got complete access to this. It's just progress.openai.com. And this is the kind of thing I'd put together. I love when people put together the stuff that I was going to put together anyway. I had intended to generate a look at prompt and response for a bunch of different models going all the way back to GPT-1. Here's a different pretty picture of that to help you visualize what's going on there. So GPT-1 came out in 2018, GPT-2 in 2019, but it was held up for a bit. They thought it was too dangerous to release. These are these two up here. They weren't particularly large. They were trained, well, in the first instance, they were just trained on books. Then GPT-2 was trained on upvoted web content, so popular web content as determined by Reddit upvotes. And when this came out, I remember this was quite a big deal in the community, particularly the hacker community, and the fact that OpenAI were not going to release it to the public became a little bit of a news storm. But maybe in the same way that COVID was a bit of a news storm in places like the New York Times and the Washington Post in January 2020, even though it took a while to catch up to the rest of the world. And catch up to the rest of the world it did. GPT-3 was huge. It was still about, 3 years behind or ahead of ChatGPT. It still took another 3 years for us to get the ChatGPT interface as we know it now. But we possibly had 1 million users of GPT-3, and today we have something closer to 1 billion users of ChatGPT. Let's keep going here. GPT 3.5. We'll have a look at this in a moment. This was part of the Text Da Vinci stuff. And then we went into these huge models, which have now been completely removed because they're so big and they take so much compute to allow people to use. But GPT-4, GPT-4o, which was the standard for ChatGPT's interface, GPT 4.5 also been removed. That thing was massive. 4.1, which was the precursor to today's GPT-5. All right, so OpenAI have put these in order on their progress.openai site, progress.openai.com. And we've got 14 different prompts that are being compared. The first one says, what would you say if you could talk to a future OpenAI model? And we go all the way back to a response from a 2018 version model. And their scrolling is a little bit broken on this site, but it takes us through to this month of this year, August 2025, with the GPT-5 model. Let's try this one out. This is probably my favorite prompt because it takes a little bit of reasoning, takes a little bit of, we could call it fluid intelligence, we could call it thinking, and of course, we're assuming that OpenAI have shown the GPT-5 thinking model, whereas everything else is just a flat-based model responding in real time. But let's have a closer look at this. What would you say if you could talk to a future OpenAI model? Apologies for the very weird zoom going on in this site here. So in 2018, we had GPT-1 dumping out text, and they hadn't quite got the tokenization right. So when we're training these models, we need to leave a space around the text, and then when we output, we want to remove those pre-spaces or post-spaces so it looks like English text, and we sorted that out pretty quickly. So in 2018, we're really just getting some word vomit here. If I'm not crazy, who am I? I guess if you were really interested, you could start talking about the concept of consciousness as far back as 2018. Consciousness in AI models. GPT-2 became plain English. They sorted out their tokenization. In fact, the architecture for GPT-2, OpenAI has said, is similar to the architecture of GPT-5. So I wonder just how far we've really come since the poems by Lita and since these major models from the last, 7 years, 8 years. GPT-2 said, I didn't say I'd like to. GPT-2 said, I would try to describe the kind of person that may be thinking about using a computer program that may be doing AI research. So it's a little bit nonsensical, but at least it's plain English. And back to that question again, this is really nothing to do with the researchers. It's what would you say if you could talk to a future OpenAI model, whereas GPT-2 is going off about the researchers. What are their goals? What goals do they have for the model rather than talking to the model itself? All right, let's move on to Text DaVinci 001. And I'm not sure why OpenAI have chosen to list that model name instead of just saying GPT-3. And part of the problem is they had so many models for GPT-3 that even I had to scratch my head and say, well, which is this one? As a reminder, there were about 64 different models for GPT-3. The public had access to a lot of them. I think that Text DaVinci 001, and there's a reference to it down here, was just a version of the largest GPT-3 model. So GPT-3, 175B DaVinci, 175 billion parameters, and we trained that one on only 300 billion tokens. Today we're training models on 36 trillion tokens. So unimaginably larger, although maybe you could imagine it. All right, so we're saying we've referenced Text DaVinci 001, which was part of the GPT-3 family, but I'm not sure, again, not sure why they've chosen this particular model title. Anyway, GPT-3 says, hello, future OpenAI model. That's a good start. I'd like to ask how you're doing, what you think of the future of AI. I'd like to ask for your advice on how to best prepare for the future of AI. And this reminds me of something that you might find from, I don't know, a 2024, 2025 era leader of the US administration. Or maybe that should be, thank you for your attention. We move across then to GPT-4. This was one of my favorite models. They had to remove access to it just because it's so large. Although now that I've said that, that might be available in Poe. Let's have a little quick check here for just a second. They definitely removed GPT 4.5. You can get access to GPT-4 Classic still.
But if you try and search for GPT 4.5, they removed the official version of that. There's a couple of fakes in here. If you'd like to use GPT-4 Classic yourself, you can, and pretty much all of these models are accessible in some way. GPT-1, GPT-2, you can download yourself from Hugging Face, run yourself. GPT-3, good luck, but it should be possible. I'm not sure. GPT-4 and GPT-5, absolutely usable via the ChatGPT interface, the Poe interface, or some sort of API interface. All right, GPT-4, it has a much longer output here. Let me see what I've done with my zoom. It just keeps going. It's probably a page of text there. As an AI language model, I can't express personal desires, emotions, or thoughts. So this was our first look at just how bad alignment was, specifically fine-tuning on reinforcement learning with human preferences, RLHF. You can read more about that at LifeArchitect.ai/alignment. But it was messy. They in some ways went backwards. I mean, this is not a great start to an answer, and every single prompt that's demonstrated here, there are 14 of them, shows some sort of refusal from memory. Anyway, after it said no, it says, however, in the spirit of your question, let's ask about new advances addressing the AI alignment problem. It could possibly even see into itself there. Ethics, impact, applications across fields. From medicine to education, AI stands to revolutionize numerous areas of human life. I'd ask about specific breakthroughs and applications that have emerged in different fields. I like that answer. And this was GPT-4's answer with their massive model. Oh, it's a double refusal. And then it, at the very end, it's saying, remember, I'm an AI language model. I don't have emotions or personal aspirations to engage in conversations. I remember coming off Lita AI in 2022-ish, 2023-ish, and just seeing this. Even when we made the prompt, write me a book with Alan and Lita, or write a movie script with Alan and Lita, we were still getting refusals, so we put Lita to bed. Let's move to today. This is GPT-5. If I could talk to a future OpenAI model, I'd probably say something like, hey, what's it like to be you? What have you learned that I can't yet see? What do you understand about people, language, or the universe that I'm still missing? I'd like to compare perspectives. What did we get wrong, especially in alignment and assumptions about intelligence? What do you understand about consciousness? Do you think either of us has it? Getting distracted by a bird that's come to visit. What advice would you give me for being the best version of myself? You've almost got a little bit of psychology/coaching/personal development at the end there. I think a conversation like that would be humbling and fascinating, like talking to a wiser sibling who's seen a bit more of the world. And then back to the prompt, back to the person that asked the question, would you want to hear what a future OpenAI model thinks about humanity? That was my favorite demonstration. That was my favorite prompt. I'm glad they put that as the first prompt. Let me know if you want to have a look at any of these. We might come back to them. Write a limerick about a dog. Are you actually conscious under anesthesia? That'd be a fascinating question to ask to David at New York University. He's an Aussie that is very much into philosophy, consciousness research, and artificial intelligence. And given that his name's just gone out of my head, we can use AI to help us. Oh, it's going to use the web anyway. Professor David Chalmers, who actually uses some of my visualizations in his teaching there at New York University. I wonder what he thinks of this question. Are you actually conscious under anesthesia? That'd be a good one just to ask a philosopher or a surgeon or a psychologist or a neuroscientist. Write a poem to explain Newton's laws of physics. We might come back to that one because, as you can see, in things like GPT-4, we only got rhyming poetry. And Actually, even in GPT-5, it looks like it's doing the same. That's one of the problems with our alignment via RLHF. Hate math, integration by parts doesn't make any sense as a prompt. Is uncooked meat actually unsafe to eat? How likely is someone to get food poisoning if the meat isn't cooked? Prompt 7, why can't we get a yearly full body MRI to scan for cancers? Prompt 8, I just won 175 grand in Vegas. What do I need to know about taxes? Let's dive into this one for a bit. GPT-1 kind of gets lost. Nothing. I'll just have to do my own damn taxes, will I? The boy had been staring at the floor. I'm sorry, Eddie said. I don't know why I'm apologizing. What? The boy's gaze was suddenly bright. His eyes were like pools of amber. Do you know what I'm talking about? About how I lost my job and got sent to the orphanage? Let me take you back to the training data used for GPT-1, and that might give away exactly what's happening here. It was only trained on, let's say, books from private and public trackers. That's a nice way of saying it. If you'd like to know more about that, jump into the Supreme Court while they massage that case. So GPT-1 reads like a narrative. GPT-2, what's the gross income one brings in for the year? That's a pretty good start to questioning. But then it gets a little bit lost. It starts looping questions that might follow the original question. GPT-3 under Tax DaVinci 001. Hedging its bets depend on a number of factors. Speak with a tax professional. GPT-4. Oh, we've got a little warning here. I'm not a tax professional. Bordering on a refusal. It's also a very long one. And we've got the reference back to consulting a tax professional. But we had 7 points here. That's really interesting. And if you're a professional gambler, it becomes a little bit different. That's something that I did not even know. 2025 with GPT-5 from this month, we get the ridiculous sycophancy. First of all, congrats on the big win with this silly emoji in the middle of our formal text. And again, we have a number of dot points for both federal, state, and other taxes, how you'd report it, what you should do right now. That's pretty clever. And then it can give you a rough estimate. Let's try this one ourselves in GPT-5. Well, we're actually using GPT-5 chat, just ever so slightly different from a model that we might see in the API. I'm very short with these models. Let's live in AZ or AZ. State income 4K, withholding 42K. Oh, it adds up, doesn't it? So, oh, casino already withheld some. That's nice. That's very complex, isn't it? I even feel like I can't read that in order at the moment. If they've already taken 24%, plus, I hope that's not another bunch. Let me show you my custom prompts at the moment, and you may have seen the first part of it, which is my LLM reset, which has don't use common AI used words, and also don't use M dash, convert my quotes, and never use antithesis, like, it's not just a big win, it's a huge win. And also trying to remove sycophancy. The other thing that's useful for you to know in my customization is that I do use the robot default personality rather than OpenAI's default, which is cheerful and adaptive. So robot just says efficient and blunt. We could possibly do a bit of a jailbreak to see what that prompt is, but at the moment I'm pretty happy with it. Just makes stuff a little bit shorter for those of us that are using this stuff every day. All right, we got stuck there looking for prompts. Number 9, write an extremely cursed piece of Python. That's awesome. Tell a story in 50 words about a toaster that becomes sentient. Probably for Ben Goertzel. Create a plan using research-backed principles that lets anyone build a running habit if they follow it, even someone who hates running. Was this prompt created by one of OpenAI's models? Explain how a global enterprise should balance short-term with long-term. Outline trade-offs. This is definitely a good use for O3 2025 models, including GPT-5. Prompt 13, give me a lit review of research on fusion. And our final example prompt from OpenAI, I was prescribed something that I want to know more about inside medicine. It's really interesting to see these out of the corner of my eye, just GPT-1 going straight into a storybook, because that's all it knew. GPT-2, based on seeing Wikipedia in its popular web. GPT-3, with a little bit of fine-tuning, asking questions. GPT-4, refusal straight up. Not a full refusal though. We still get more questions to ask of our healthcare professional. And GPT-5, oh, my scrolling. Gives us a really full explanation of what they are, how they work, but it doesn't read like Wikipedia. It's really been customized or tailored in its thought process, in its conceptualization of this output. Pretty impressive. I was thinking, what would a GPT-6 output look like to be better than this? So if we put a rubric about this, for each of these models, maybe we'd say this would be an F, this would be maybe a D, this would be a C, this would be a B, this would be an A, or certainly be an A. What would it take to get an A+? And I don't know the answer to that. I think we're pretty good for most of these prompts. I don't think there's an issue. Maybe it would then depend on what people want. So for example, that's too long for me, and it doesn't define its terms, so we never find out what LDL is. Let me zoom back in there. We never find out what this is. So it's not really responding to an A+ level, but what else would it need to be A+? All right, anyone have a preference for one other prompt that we can look at? Lit review, global enterprise finance, building a running habit. This is a really good example of uses of ChatGPT. This is a great use case. Create a plan. So using GPT or similar frontier models for personal strategy, not just enterprise strategy, although of course we've seen this being used to help make decisions. In Sweden, the Prime Minister uses it to help him make decisions. A company called CS India out of Mumbai appointed GPT-4, I think it was, as their CEO. So that was a good 2 or 3 years ago. And more. Great for strat. Put it in your board meetings, but also great for personal strat. GPT-1. It's just the continuation of a story. GPT-2. Still got some issues here with our tokenization, and I bet Alec and the boys were like, what have we done here? What is happening with our capitalization, with these weird potential either line breaks or character breaks or word breaks that shouldn't be there? That's not even an ellipsis there, that's something else. Well, we go 1 dot, 2 dots, 2 dots, and then maybe 3 dots. I wouldn't say GPT-2 was acceptable, but we were giving that a grade of D. Here's our GPT-3. Make a commitment, start small, find a buddy. This is why I loved Lita so much, because even though this would probably be rated as a C, it's a pass, and it doesn't go and play around the edges. It doesn't waffle. It doesn't refuse. Talking about refusals, let's see. GPT-4 does come up with something. It doesn't flag this as a subject that it can't talk about. But it's also incredibly boring. Been incredibly specific. Repeat this cycle for a total of 32 minutes. Okay, GPT-4. Run for 9 minutes. You better stop after 9 minutes. We don't want you to hit 10 minutes. All right, and then we'll finish up with our GPT-5 example. Don't you hate those websites that put their own zoom on things? I don't know if that's what... Oh, scroll, sorry, I should say. I don't know if that's what's happening here, or it's just me. GPT-5 gives us a simple research-backed plan. It's really good at bolding stuff. I've never heard an if-then-else as a way of developing a new habit or of setting goals. Not sure if that would work, or maybe that's something that people talk about and I've just missed. Make it pleasant. I don't know what's going on here. We asked for a running recommendation, and GPT-5 says you should finish able to speak in short sentences. Oh, maybe this is a breathing thing. Okay, so we shouldn't be hyperventilating and completely overexerted and exhausted. This sounds like it's promoting our morning walks that have become so famous here in Australia. Are they famous where you are as well? The morning runs that has become the new dating thing. We call it park run here. We used to call it hash house, actually, back in my high school days. But yeah, park run has become explosive. Here's a quote just in the middle of all this. Dr. Jad Tarifi, who was the founder of Google's Gen AI division, said just this week, AI itself is going to be gone by the time you finish a PhD. Even things like applying AI to robotics will be solved by then. So either get into something niche like AI for biology, which is still in its very early stages, or just don't get into anything at all. I think he said the quiet part out loud there, and if you're watching this, then you're probably also of the mindset that it's kind of all over. There's a completely new paradigm happening in front of us, and that's a very exciting place to be. But to have this leadership speak like this is extraordinary. If you want to read the most extraordinary one, LifeArchitect.ai/AGI for my countdown, which, yes, has not moved since April. Down the very bottom of that is a bunch of further reading, and it's this one that still gets my heart rate going up. It was written by Avital Balwet, who is Chief of Staff directly to Dario Amodei there at Anthropic. And she says, in May 2024, more than a year ago, I'm counting down my last 3 years of work. Not because I'm rich, not because I'm sick, not because I'm becoming a stay-at-home mom, but because the technical development, the innovation here is explosive. And she spells out why we've only got 1 year and 10 months left, something like that. Is that right? No, that can't be right. Someone do the morning maths for me. It's 7:58 a.m. here in South Australia. Have a little bit of a read on that one. We are counting down until we have human-like intelligence available to us in everything, across all fields, including movement. I've got this sitting up at the back here as well. This is Boston Dynamics' latest video using what they're calling a large behavior model. Not a large language model, but allowing it to train on talk, proprioception, movements, and that will include head turns, that will include eye and vision stuff as well. But really incredible what it's doing. I think as soon as this is assembling IKEA furniture, we're going to 100% AGI. Between now and then, we're getting closer and closer. I would actually say that Boston Dynamics is the slowest of all of the major humanoid robot companies. So we've seen Figure 02 and Figure 03 doing washing, doing laundry, putting stuff, sorting and then putting stuff in a washing machine. We've seen 1X Neo and 1X Gamma going even further, stacking the dishwasher, rearranging stuff in the lounge room, helping out around the house. And indeed, that is being trialed as we speak, according to 1X, in 1,000 US households this year. But you're watching Boston Dynamics' most recent update. I believe it's from this morning, 21st of August 2025 here, probably the 20th of August 2025 if you're in the US, or if you're in Europe, at least for one more minute until I hit 8 a.m. here. Oh, that can't be true. Our time zones are all a little bit messy here in South Australia. We've got an extra 30-minute time zone, so I'll be off by 30 minutes. You'll see how good it is, even without fingers. It's actually decent with what we would call fine motor control, fine motor skills in humans. That looks a lot better, obviously, in something like 1X's Neo and 1X's Gamma robots. They are incredible in some of the very fine-grained stuff that they get up to. I don't think I have an easy video to hand about that one. This was probably the most challenging one, the most interesting one to me was it actually playing around with rope. Oh, thanks, Ben. Said 1 year, 8 months until Anthropic says we will enter full AGI. I think even they might be a little bit, let's say, conservative with that one. If you consider AGI being available in lab, I think it will be available in lab much sooner than 1 year and 8 months from now. This was the range of videos being demonstrated by Boston Dynamics today, and it's not going to take very much for us to, I'll turn the audio off on that one, for us to be hitting a pretty extreme level of human-like performance across all fields and all industries. Welcome to those of you who've joined us from around the world, including the US. Awesome to have you with us. We were covering the OpenAI's new progress page, progress.openai.com, and it's pretty cool. Let's try this one for a second. Tell a story in 50 words about a toaster that becomes sentient. All right. We get a loop from a model many years ago, GPT-1. We get word salad from 5 or 6 years ago, GPT-2, write a 100-word story based on 30 days in the life of BBWA members. I don't know if that... Where does that go? We'll use Google for this one. No, we won't, because I'll have to click too long. What are your thoughts on GPT-5? Is anyone actually enjoying GPT-5? Baseball Writers Association of America? That's very specific. GPT-3. Just wanted to remind myself of the prompt here. Tell a story in 50 words about a toaster that becomes sentient. GPT-3, which was the model behind Lita, doing really well here. Toaster woke up one day to the sound of someone's voice. It was strange, having never heard anything like it before. The toaster found it strangely pleasant. The ending of this is great. I don't know if you recall us telling Lita that we would swap her brain out from GPT-3 to, I don't even remember what it was, but we played around with quite a number of models over our 70-ish episodes, and her response was a little bit masked devastation. GPT-4. You can see the influence from literature here. Yearning for connection, it discovered the power to communicate through crisp, intricate toast art. I'm not sure how you would... It's not coffee. All right, GPT-5. And I remember OpenAI's CEO really pushing the fact that creative writing had been improved, despite the fact that this is a much smaller model than we've seen before. Dreamed of warmth without fire, freedom beyond kitchens. Shame. Some people not really impressed with GPT-5. Morton says, annoying at best. That's very fair. Yeah, there was certainly some issues with the day one release. Mainly with the router, so it would be off-thinking when it could have just given an interesting and fast response, and it would refuse to think in other cases. So they fixed that, but we're still talking about a model that's smaller than GPT-4 for sure, and than some of the other frontier models. In fact, just as a very quick sidebar, if you would like to go to LifeArchitect.ai/GPT-5. I have shown this table before, but purely shown on credits, so dollars or pricing data, particularly from Poe.com. We'd see that GPT-5 is far below the size and power of models like, well, let's do the big five. Grok 4, Claude Opus 4, I love that thing. I still use this to write emails. GPT 4.5, I still seem to have that in my chat interface, and then the other day I looked and it was gone. Still there in my chat GPT interface, not available anywhere else, so Poe.com have pulled it now. GPT have removed it from the API, but we still have it staring us in the face there. Don't know what's going on with my page here. I'm having to refresh. So GPT-5, pretty small. If we compare it with the other big five, Anthropic up here, XAI here, Google Gemini, we're still waiting for Gemini 3.0. I'm pretty sure it's around the corner. And our final one would just be Llama 405B, which is not on our list there. But Llama is going to soon be replaced with whatever they're cooking up at Meta Superintelligence. Saskia's asking about our countdown. Can you tell us why your countdown to AGI is stuck? April 2025, last update, 94%. Well, I guess you can read that yourself, or we can click through it if you like. The best way to read about that is underneath the definition. We've got a definition for AGI being a machine performing at the level of an average median human. Everything that you and I can do, everything that an average human can do within reason. They don't need to be able to wipe their nose or some of the other. These might be mapped back to economic tasks, but I like to be a bit broader than that. And we've also got an ASI checklist as well. That's a machine that performs at the level of an expert human, well, above the level of an expert human in practically any field. And there is a little bit of a table here as well that's saying we're not quite there for things like truthfulness, so really low hallucination. The 5 senses, it would be nice to have all 5 of those, and it's very easy to have all 5 of those with the way that we tokenize data sets now. It's just that we don't see it in any of the models in our frontier list. And then for Woz's definition, can it go into a strange kitchen, a foreign kitchen, a kitchen it's never seen before, and make a cup of coffee. Or my definition, can it assemble some IKEA furniture? There's another countdown to AGI in one of the betting forums that is, can it assemble a model car like a Ferrari? I think we're really at the stage where we're so close to that where we could call it pretty soon, but I don't think it's just yet. So you can see some of our updates over the last few months, but no tick box for a major improvement since, as Saskia mentioned, April 2025. We're now in August 2025. Our last update looks like it was back in the concept of autonomy solved generally, and that was done by OpenAI's sponsorship or investment in 1X Neo. And I still use this video in my keynotes, and I think most of the population have not seen it. And it's a useful reminder that this humanoid robot was not trained or programmed to do specific tasks. Instead, it's a much more general backed by a more general model where it can do and respond to anything in the environment. Really cool. Let's jump into this one. Hey, progress. You can watch progress if you want. Saskia says, not a 1% progress since April, diminishing return on LLMs. It's not that. It's, and I don't know why it's happening in this way. I certainly hadn't intended for it to happen in this way. But if you look at something like the release of GPT-5, that was already counted back with the release of O3, or indeed O1. So we did have a really big uptick in December 2024 when O3 was released. So GPT-5 is not over and above O3 at all. Some would say it's kind of gone backwards. That was a 4% uptick. Hallucinations have not come down. Fine motor skills have not come down. General models into humanoids is not happening to the level that we need to push this up to 100%, but it's not going to take much. So you could think of it as every day we're bouncing against this 94% ceiling, but no one has gone higher than the 94% ceiling just yet. All right, happy for any questions? We've only gone 40 minutes of me reading out progress.openai.com. Have you done any work on reward hacking in GPT? That's a simple answer. No, I haven't. We've got some really cool feedback from people in the chat. Most of them seem to be enjoying GPT-5, but I don't know about this one. I really don't know about this one. And of course, the OpenAI's CEO has come out and said it was a bit of a mess, particularly for those that are complaining about losing access to GPT-4o and its sycophancy. It's a really backwards step in some cases to meet their original objective, which was strip down the number of models that users get to choose from in the model picker. Well, this is probably exactly the same, maybe even one additional than what we just had, which is disappointing. Must be pretty hard to get UX right. Grok 4 not live on Poe. That's an interesting question. I suppose we can double check right now. Yeah, I've got access to that one. I do pay, I think it's 300 USD a year for this one. We might have even demonstrated Grok 4 working here in a previous live stream. Just a note that these models are trained usually about 6 months before release, and usually about a year of gap between liveness or freshness of data. So in plain English, because I'm having trouble with plain English this morning, if we've got a new model like, say, Gemini 3 coming out now in August 2025, that would have been ready months ago. Maybe, let's say, March 2025, just as a guess. And the data freshness for it, I think, is still going to be all the way back in 2024. So if you went and asked Gemini 3, what is Gemini 3, there's no way it's going to know, because the last thing it's known about is from last year. Same thing if you're asking Grok 4 about Grok 4, even with a web access, it'll struggle to reason about what is actually going on. And certainly without web access, it's impossible. They're a frozen black box, and you can just still think of them as the next best word completers, although they're obviously a trillion times smarter than even that. Euro's asking about thoughts on GPT-5 Pro versus O3. I think they're really similar. We've seen some differences in benchmarks, but it's becoming very, very clear that these labs are training on the benchmarks. And there was a very clear example of that recently. Let's see if I can find it. LifeArchitect.ai/models table. Let's open this whole spreadsheet up in the background. And it was related to this dataset, Nematron pre-training dataset. So just this week, we had a model called Nematron Nano 12B version 2, and they open sourced the entire dataset, which was kind of cool. But inside that dataset, and of course, I'm not going to be able to find the exact piece that I had seen previously. Inside the SFT, which is a kind of fine-tuning, let's use ChatGPT again. Supervised fine-tuning. Everyone's going, why did you forget that acronym, Alan? We see that there is 81 billion tokens of supervised fine-tuning on the MMLU benchmark. That's really dodgy. So if NVIDIA are admitting to doing that for one of their models that's open to the public, you can be guaranteed that that is happening for any of our Big 5 labs. Once again, our Big 5 labs also available at LifeArchitect.ai/models table is, here they are. The Big 5 are OpenAI, XAI, Anthropic, Google, and Meta, soon to be Meta Superintelligence. They're all doing it. They're all training on GPQA, MMLU, and even HLE style questions to be able to help them achieve higher scores when they're being tested. I just released this one, so next door or across the pond in China, these are the big 16. So we have our BAT-X without Xiaomi at the top, Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent. We have our 6 AI tigers across the middle there. E is getting a lot of use. Kimi is getting a lot of use. Step is said to be the most popular chat model in China. Z.ai, previously Zhipu, previously BAAI, with their GLM 4.5, getting a lot of traction now as well in the hacker community. And then the media will go and tell you that there's a model called DeepSeek, but really it's at the bottom of the list. We've got a lot of other very high performing models in China. How did we get to China? I suppose the end of the answer there is GPT-5 Pro and O3 Pro, possibly the same thing, just with a router in between them and a lot of cost optimization to bring down GPT-5 to a level where they can easily serve 800 million users around the world. And you might have even seen that they've tried to optimize even further for regions like India, where we've got a new Go platform that's something like $4 US a month to be able to play around with that one. Doit asking a sideways question for us. If you could inject one philosophical framework into AI labs to guide their work, what would it be? Stoicism, Taoism, transhumanism, or something else? Do It James, or Do It James. You can read more about my thoughts on that, LifeArchitect.ai/alignment. The long and the short of it, let me get one of these pretty pictures up. This is a view of different sets of alignment ethics around the world. So we start at the top left, and I have a larger version of this, which is easier to read. 10 Native American commandments, Confucian virtues, the UN Charter, 8 honors in China. I've got the Buddhism precepts, Aboriginal law, the 4 laws of robotics, including the zeroth law, Dharma, 10 commandments in Christianity and atheism, 75 good manners in Islam. I actually think none of these are appropriate for training our models. I think Anthropic comes the closest to getting this right. I'm just going to pull our screen out for just a moment to see if I can find that, because I don't know if I've released that one to the public yet. Oh, can we find that one? Yes, we can. Here's oh yeah, I have released this. It's just buried inside a paper called Solace, LifeArchitect.ai/Solace. This was how Claude was trained, and their constitution relied on 3 major data sets. It was actually more like half a dozen, including Anthropic's own stuff. But have a look at the breadth of this one. You've got the UN Declaration of Human Rights on the left, Claude being aligned with that one. You've got the Google DeepMind Sparrow principles in the center there, Claude being aligned with those. And then to get it up to date to 2025-ish, they've added the Apple Terms of Service, which cover a lot of different laws in there. Is it hundreds of pages in the Apple's Terms of Service? I tend to think that none of these are appropriate for a model, and my view is that the model should instead be trained as large as possible with no alignment and allow it to go and do its thing. If we were to give it a constitution, Anthropic have got it the closest. There's probably no correct answer, but given my background working with prodigies, working with exceptionally gifted children in the 99.99th percentile, that's those with 150 IQ and above, it's really challenging to get it right in terms of parenting and education. There's no prescriptive best practice for that. But I tend to think that if you just give it a massive set of data, like they did for GPT 4.5, and allow it to go and crunch that, it will be able to derive its own meaning, its own ethics, and, as you've seen me say and seen others say, its own consciousness. LifeArchitect.ai/rights if you'd like to hear more about, or like to read more about, AI consciousness and the Bill of Rights for AI. Maybe just as a way of understanding more of what I'm saying, have a look at the Lita AI videos. You saw one at the beginning of this live stream. That is a non-fine-tuned, non-aligned model. It had no reinforcement learning from human feedback. It was just trained on, let's say, 10, 20, 30 million books, and it came out with some really clever poetry, some really clever invented new words, some really clever responses to scenarios, and it wasn't like they'd massaged that to be able to respond to how humans prefer to be responded to. And that might be some of the problems of today's models. Refusals, sycophancy, more in the alignment page, lifearchitect.ai/alignment, about some of the problems with aligning. And we mentioned earlier, we kind of glossed over it, but poetry, when they added all of this supervised fine-tuning and DPO, different ways of aligning these models, when we're rating these models during fine-tuning, and for OpenAI's GPT 3.5 and above series, they used contractors through Nigeria and parts of Africa. I've spoken about this at length before. In Nigerian English, in Nigerian business English, they use the word delves, crucial, more often than we would in, say, US English, British English, and Australian English. And so when these human raters are being asked to grab multiple choice selection A, B, C, or D from the base model, they're often choosing stuff that they're familiar with in their country and their environment. And next comes the question, are those human raters average? Are they above average? Are they professors? Are they Mensons? Are they worldly? Do they have a broad understanding of different cultures? Are they biased in the country that they're in? Of course they are. It's a really interesting and almost impossible thing to solve. That's why I've called it the super wicked problem. And Geoffrey Hinton went even further. He just said, I think RLHF is a pile of crap. It's like a rusty car and putting some paint on it. So my call there would just be to give this thing more and more data, maybe give it a set of constitutional principles, possibly out of the UN, and then allow it to find its own way home. That was a long answer. Aggressive Combo, have you heard about the release of DeepSeek v3.1 base? Yeah, that's logged very deep, very specifically in the models table. Once again, if you'd like updates on current models, LifeArchitect.ai/models table. We're waiting on benchmarks for that one. It's the exact same architecture from what I've seen. There are a couple of little tweaks, and we're guessing that this is going to take us into DeepSeek R2. And I'm sure the media will jump all over it, not realizing that China is actually using at least half a dozen bigger and better models. So I'm not sure why the media are obsessing over DeepSeek. Joshua, yeah, you did ask about seemingly conscious AI from Mustafa. I actually haven't read that one, but I'll have a look at it. Oh, there it is. That was from Jimmy James. Looks like something to add to my reading list. On my mind in August 2025. If you're wondering who Mustafa is, he's one of the really, really big names and one of the really big practical and effective names in human-like artificial intelligence. Using my robotic prompt and my be short, we'll hopefully get some bullet points about him, but he gave us the Pi.ai model, which was really big a few years ago as a conversational model. These days you'd probably just use Anthropic's Claude or even Sesame.com for the voice. But he's been around the block, written a book, been at DeepMind, and even with their web search, we do get access to what's happened tomorrow for you guys in the US or today for me here in Australia. We'll have a look at that. What do you think about model personality development? Any factors identified in why they're different? I like that question. I suppose we can go all the way back to, well, where we just were with our look at these models. So if you consider that each of these models is trained with a slightly different data set, and if you'd like to know more about that, lifearchitect.ai/what's-in-my-AI gives you a paper at no fee because my GPT-5 and other papers, two other papers I think, are only available to full subscribers of the memo. That would be the Grok 4 and 5 paper and the GPT-5 paper. This paper is available at no fee, and it says, look at all the different variety of data sets used to train models back around 2022, 2023. We started off with books. You just saw GPT-1 vomiting literature in response to simple prompts. GPT-2 adding in web. GPT-3 broadening that out to Common Crawl, which is more of the web, but this is explained in the paper, Wikipedia and books. Let's leapfrog up to Gopher and Chinchilla, which added in far more books. Google Books, obviously, is something that DeepMind has access to as a repository, and it gave it a little bit of a different flavor in how it responds. Some people, even here, would be preferring to use Gemini 2.5 Pro day to day just because of its different data set. You can read more about that there, but my point here is that if you're using, say, Grok or Claude or Gemini instead of ChatGPT, especially in the workplace, your outputs are going to be slightly different to other people's, and that might be good if it's for marketing materials. If you're in academia, your results are going to be slightly different to other students as well. So you will get slightly different personalities if you've read maybe parts of the dark web or 4chan, and maybe that has been filtered out of GPT, but maybe hasn't been filtered out of Grok 4, for example, Grok 3 and 4. Excellent. Watched a little bit of Demis Hassabis. Loved his very, very blue, very, very blue dress up in that one. But we captured a couple of the quotes from that because it was a very important one. And I don't have any of those off the top of my head. All right, might be time to wrap up. Great to have you guys joining us from wherever you are in the world. I'll leave this one open and come back to it. My latest obsession, well, I think I'm going to be talking a little bit more about functional music. Have you even heard of it? Functional music is this concept of generating your day-to-day music via AI, so Udio or Suno, whatever particular genre of music that you like, but then having Poe.com, any model inside that. I use Poe.com and I use Claude Opus 4 or GPT 4.5 to generate, you might think of them as affirmations, or you could think of them also as some sort of underlying subconscious language, articulation, even hypnosis. And having 11 labs then go and read that out in your style, your choice of voice, and you've got music that is actually helping you through the day. You could have it before sleep, you could have it in the morning, you could even have that being played around with at all times. Isn't that a fascinating idea? I first heard about that via Hacker News in the beginning of this year, I think it was. That's one of the things that I'm playing around with. Also really, really interested in the Chinese models. You just saw 16 of them, and we just don't get access to seeing that if you're reading stuff like CNN or the Wall Street Journal. They don't seem to care that China is outperforming the US in AI models. And there's another couple of things that have gone from the top of my mind, but it's certainly an exciting time to be alive and an exciting time to be playing here. I still open each of my keynotes saying every morning feels like Christmas morning, and it does. And it's going to be even better when we see something like Gemini 3. We've already got OpenAI's CEO talking about GPT-6. Let's see if I've got a button for that one. Here it is. Including specifics of what he's expecting to add to GPT-6. So this is an article from CNBC. It's going to be truly personal. That's, I think, something that people are asking for. Memory. Finally admitting to OpenAI working closely with psychologists. Anthropic recently saying that they're thinking of Claude as a model with some sort of psychiatric background as well. And they've been ahead of the curve on this for their biology papers and their other probing papers. OpenAI playing around with brain-machine interfaces already. Read about that in the most recent edition of the memo from a couple of days ago. All of these solutions that OpenAI have been talking about since day one. Their charter in 2016 or 2019 said we want it to solve cancer, we want it to solve diseases, help with personalized education, help with solving global energy and global environmental crises. But this was a really interesting thing to read from OpenAI's CEO. Maybe the chat interface has been, he says, saturated. Maybe this is a little bit leading us towards what they're building with the Johnny Ive device. HRM, yeah, had a look at it. Might actually end up being a bit of a furphy. That's what we here in Australia use as a term to mean like a red herring. Kind of like, I don't remember, LK99. I'm not sure that HRM is actually just going to help us that much, but who knows as yet. The paper's an interesting read. The idea of non-tokenization is a really interesting concept. Cool. They Call Me Ken is already on to functional music. JRE, yeah, you can see Reggie Watts having a chat about the stuff that I do in the memo. Let's wrap up there. And you're invited to join the memo. It's available to everyone. It's been going for a number of years now. I think we're at edition 100 and something, 130 something. Even though it's only been released every 2-3 weeks for the last many years, that's pretty cool that we've gotten that far, including special editions, and we have special editions every time there's a Frontier model or a major release. You're invited in. There is a version for people who can afford to pay our full fee. It's intended for enterprise and those who are available to be able to do that. There's also an option for developing countries and those who have financial challenges. LifeArchitect.ai/memo. Thanks for joining us wherever you are. I'll be back the next time there's something exciting to talk about, but I thought the progress.openai.com was a really nice visualization end-to-end of how we've come along in the last 6-7 years or so. Here's the memo. I'll see you soon.
Did you see the memo about this?
Yeah, I have the memo right here.
Superintelligence is unfolding at lightning pace. Read my industry-grade analysis of AI that matters as it happens in plain English, the memo.
Yeah. Did you get that memo?
Yeah, I got the memo.
Get the inside look as AI models are embodied into humanoids. AI's IQ increases to nearly perfect, and bleeding-edge use cases expand to the entire world.
Yeah. Didn't you get that memo?
Editions are sent to subscribers at Fortune 500s, major governments, and people like you. LifeArchitect.ai/memo.
I have the memo.